I used to think I was just being lazy, that maybe I lacked discipline, motivation, or the kind of energy that other people seem to have every single day. I blamed myself for not being more productive, for not waking up early, for not enjoying the things I used to love. I thought maybe I was just not trying hard enough. But then I realized something strange. I was sleeping 8 hours a night, sometimes more, and still waking up feeling completely drained. I would eat well, drink enough water, take breaks, and yet I still felt like my body had been running a marathon in my sleep. I started to dread small things. Answering emails, taking calls, even opening the blinds in the morning. Everything felt heavier than it should have. My mind was foggy. I was not sad exactly. I was not crying or feeling hopeless. But I was not okay either. I was disconnected from people, from purpose, from myself. I had no explanation. I was not physically sick, and I could not point to any major trauma. But I could feel something quietly breaking inside me. At first I told myself I was just tired. But after weeks of feeling this way, I realized it was something deeper. I was not just tired, I was mentally exhausted. And the worst part, I did not even notice when it started. That is when I knew I had to figure out what was going on inside my mind before this invisible exhaustion swallowed me whole. I never used to think my environment had anything to do with how I felt. I thought stress was just part of being an adult. We all complain about deadlines, we all feel tired. That's just life. Right. But something shifted when I took a closer look at what my daily environment was actually doing to my nervous system. I was waking up and checking emails before I even got out of bed. My boss had no concept of boundaries. Meetings were booked over lunch. Slack notifications came in at midnight, and if you didn't respond quickly, there was tension. Not always loud, but it was there. A cold kind of pressure. Unspoken, heavy. I realized I was never really resting. Even when I wasn't working, I was still working in my head. Anticipating problems, replaying mistakes, bracing for the next thing to go wrong. And the truth is our bodies don't know the difference between a real threat and a psychological one. When your brain perceives that you're under constant threat, it triggers your fight or flight response over and over again. This is what chronic stress does. It doesn't explode, it simmers, and it starts to break down your system from the inside out. I started reading about something called the HPA axis. It's short for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. It's the system that controls your stress response. When it's working properly, it helps you respond to danger. But when it gets dysregulated from too much constant stress, your entire body goes off balance. You stop producing cortisol at the right times. Your circadian rhythm gets disrupted. Your energy crashes. Your mood swings. Your immune system weakens. Your memory fades. And worst of all, you no longer know what real rest even feels like. Your nervous system stays activated, like your brain is always scanning the environment for threats, even when there are none. That's what happened to me. At first I thought I was just being overdramatic, but then I noticed the little things. I couldn't enjoy music anymore. I stopped laughing. I avoided calls, even with close friends. I felt numb. My body was always tense. Shoulders tight, jaw clenched, breath shallow. It was like my whole system forgot how to feel safe, how to relax, and the more I ignored it, the worse it got. I started to lose my ability to bounce back. Things that used to take a day to recover from now took a week. I was living in survival mode, every day. And the hardest part was that no one saw it. On the outside, I looked fine. I still got work done, I still smiled in meetings, but inside I was crumbling, slowly, quietly. Until one day I hit a wall. Not a breakdown, not a dramatic collapse, just emptiness, like my mind and body had given up. And I remember thinking, this can't be normal. This can't be what life is supposed to feel like. That's when I started to connect the dots that I wasn't lazy. I wasn't broken. I was burned out. My environment had been triggering chronic stress for so long that my system could no longer reset. The alarm had been ringing for months. And I had just learned to tune it out. At some point, it was not just about being tired anymore. I started to feel like I was not fully here. Like I was watching my life happen from a distance. I could see myself doing things. Talking, walking, typing emails, but it was like I was on autopilot. And behind that autopilot was nothing, just fog. This was not sadness, it was not pain, it was emptiness, a dull, muted version of life. That is when I knew something was deeply wrong. I was not just exhausted, I was disconnected from myself. I later learned this feeling had a name, dissociation, a defense mechanism. When your brain has been under stress for so long that it starts to detach, to protect you, your mind says, if I cannot stop the overwhelm, maybe I will just shut down the feeling. And that is exactly what happened to me. I stopped feeling much of anything. Joy, anger, curiosity, all gone. And what was left was the strange sense of not knowing who I was anymore. I could still do things. I still paid my bills. Still showed up to work, but there was no one behind the eyes. I was there. But not really there. The hardest part was that I could not explain it to anyone. How do you tell someone that your thoughts feel fuzzy, that you forget why you walked into a room, that you reread the same sentence 5 times and still cannot process it, that you stand in the shower not knowing what to do next, that you cannot feel anything when good things happen, that your memories feel far away, that even when you laugh it does not feel like it came from inside you? That is cognitive fatigue. That is emotional exhaustion. That is what happens when your brain has been stuck in survival mode for too long. It stops filtering. It stops prioritizing. It stops protecting you from overload. And then everything starts to slip, bit by bit, until even your own thoughts feel foreign. I read about how chronic stress affects the hippocampus, the part of the brain that handles memory and learning. When cortisol stays elevated for too long, it starts to damage that area. You forget things, you lose track of time, you stop processing normally, and your ability to bounce back gets weaker and weaker. That explained a lot. Why I could not focus, why I kept zoning out, why I felt like a stranger to myself. My mind was not broken, it was overwhelmed, and it had been asking for help for a very long time. But because I looked functional on the outside, no one noticed, not even me. I kept performing, smiling, meeting deadlines, but my body was shutting down, my sense of self was eroding, and no amount of coffee or motivation quotes could bring me back. I needed more than rest. I needed repair. I needed reconnection. To myself, to my thoughts, to my feelings, and I had to learn how to do that from the ground up, not with force, but with patience. Because healing is not loud, it is quiet, and it starts when you finally admit, I do not feel like myself anymore, and that matters. Healing did not come to me all at once. There was no breakthrough moment, no single day where I suddenly felt better. It came in layers, slowly, quietly, through tiny choices that felt meaningless at first. I started by walking. 15 minutes every morning, no headphones, just air and sunlight. My body resisted at first. Everything felt heavy, but after a few days something shifted. I began to crave the movement. I learned that walking stimulates the production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that helps regenerate neurons damaged by stress. I did not fully understand the science then. I just knew I felt more alive after each walk. Then I started writing, not long journal entries, just a few sentences a day. How I felt, what I noticed, what I remembered from childhood, what I was afraid of. It was an attempt to reconnect with myself, to hear my own voice again without judgment, without noise. I also changed how I approached sleep. I used to scroll on my phone until I passed out, but I read that blue light suppresses melatonin. That deep sleep is when the brain clears out toxins like amyloid beta. So I began protecting my nights. No screens after 9 p.m. I used blackout curtains. I created rituals, a warm shower, a cup of tea, a few pages of a book. At first, nothing happened. But over time, my body began to recognize the rhythm again. I started falling asleep easier, waking up less anxious. My dreams came back. And that was a sign that my brain was starting to process again. I also set boundaries, not big dramatic ones, just small quiet decisions. I stopped replying to emails after hours. I turned off notifications on weekends. I said no to meetings that did not matter, not because I was lazy, but because I was rebuilding. I was protecting the little energy I had so it could go toward healing. I reached out to one friend, not a group, just one person I trusted. I told them I had been gone for a while. Not physically, but emotionally. They listened. They did not try to fix me. They just said they were glad I said something. And in that moment, I remembered what connection felt like. Not loud, not dramatic, just real. I also redefined what rest meant. I used to think rest was sleep or lying down, but I learned about active recovery, gentle movement, creative play, listening to music without doing something else, being in nature. These things helped reset my nervous system. They reminded my body that the world was not always dangerous, that safety still existed, that calm could be practiced, not earned, not waited for, practiced. I still have days when the fog returns, when I feel distant or tired. But now I recognize it. I meet it with compassion, not criticism. I slow down instead of pushing harder. I listen instead of numbing, because I finally understand. Healing is not a race, it is not a checklist, it is a relationship, and like all relationships it takes time, presence, and choice, every day. Looking back, I realized that what saved me was not some big decision or miracle moment. It was the small, quiet choice to stop ignoring myself, to stop pushing through the pain like it was normal, to stop pretending I was fine just because I could function. I used to think rest was something you had to earn, that you had to prove your worth before allowing yourself to pause. But now I understand that rest is not a reward, it is a responsibility. It is where real strength begins. The strength to feel, the strength to listen, the strength to stay present even when it hurts. I used to be afraid that if I slowed down I would fall behind, that people would forget me, that I would disappoint everyone. But slowing down was how I finally caught up, with myself, with my needs, with my truth. If you are listening to this and you feel tired in a way sleep cannot fix, I want you to know that you are not alone. If you feel like you are disappearing inside your own life, like you are performing instead of living, please hear this. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not weak. You are carrying more than your system was ever designed to hold, and your exhaustion is valid. Your feelings are valid. Your desire to rest is valid. You do not need to wait for a crisis to start healing. You can choose it now. In this quiet moment, you can choose to stop running and start breathing. You can choose to stop fighting yourself and start forgiving. So take one deep breath. Feel it all the way in and out. Put your hand on your chest and say it gently. I am still here. I am allowed to rest. I am allowed to feel. I am allowed to begin again. This is not the end of you. This is the returning, the remembering, the rebuilding. You are not too far gone. You are right on time and you matter so much